We plan to capture 850 minke whales. In addition, we'll capture 50 each of humpback and fin whales. During this expedition, as a feasibility study, we plan to capture 850 minke whales and 10 fin whales.
Whaling is no different, in my opinion, commercial activity than raising chicken or having pig farm or anything like that. It's just the same.
If you have an animal that makes you feel small, and whales make everyone feel small, and if that happens, then to go up and kill it is just, I think, is madness.
Whale conservationists against whale hunters. What is really behind the conflict? For the first time, both sides express themselves openly.
Why people still want to do it, they feel it's part of their culture, you know, it's part of what makes the nation unique. People living close to nature and wanting to live with nature, they want to eat it.
Here in this land, we hunt for food. If one of them is ready to be taken, they decide amongst themselves.
If commercial whaling starts up again at scale, it cannot be managed. We will not learn from our past mistakes.
How will the fight for the whales continue? Who will win in the end? Whales, giants worthy of protection or just a commodity? Whale hunters and conservationists are entrenched. No other animal has been the cause of so many international treaties, aroused so much passion and anger. Diplomats and activists from more than 80 countries meet every year to negotiate new catch quotas. And that's despite the international ban on whaling in force since 1986.
We made this thing called a moratorium. That was achieved, that happened, and now it's being undone. The rule of law is being ignored. There is, in effect, a thing called a moratorium. We're not going to change it, but we are going to kill whales during it, which is sort of, what?
Countries such as Japan, Norway and Iceland want to increase their quotas and to hunt endangered species. In the face of a tangle of paragraphs, this simple question leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
Iceland and Norway used a contractually legal exception to this hunting ban, so they don't see themselves tied to this. There is also an internationally recognized trading ban on whale products, and the three countries have vetoed this ban. Iceland, Norway and Japan are, in a way, the triangle that perceives whaling as a sort of future model.
I think that the proposal which is under discussion right now is happening right at this moment. If that proposal goes through, what actually will happen is that it will undo about 40 years of work, and we will go right back to where we were in the late 40s, early 50s of the last century.
In the last century, it was mainly the Russians, Americans and Germans who hunted the big whales to near extinction. It was due to the whales that the lights were on at the start of the Industrial Revolution.
The reason whaling began is it was an incredibly important commodity for industrial civilization. It was the source of oil. You know, there was no petroleum. Oil was a big part of the Industrial Revolution, and it all came from whales.
In the first few decades of the last century, nearly 2 million large whales disappeared into the blubber tanks of the factory ships.
And they just killed them off. Even we didn't need to kill them off. They just kill, kill, kill. In general, people never know when to stop. which is a big thing covering whale conservation, fish conservation, everything. We don't know when to stop. People are very bad at regulating themselves.
When numbers of whales had been reduced below economic levels in one ocean, they were found in another. If one species became difficult to find, the hunters went for another. If one market for whale products collapsed, a new one emerged. When hunting weapons reached their limits, new, more efficient ones were developed.
The main argument that is used by the whalers is, well, we think whales are no different than a cow or a pig or a chicken. They're probably talking about the mental capacity of these animals.
Pathologists have discovered that inside the brain of humpback whales is a particular kind of neuron called a spindle neuron, which previously was only found in higher primates. Those animals, say these researchers, who are capable of experiencing complex emotion.
Gee whiz, let's see. Does that mean that they're stupider than we are? Or that they're less capable of calculating things? I don't think so. But I do think that nobody, including most particularly me, has any idea what whales are using their brains for.
The brain of a sperm whale weighs up to 8 kilograms, the largest brain in the animal world. They hunt squid at a depth of up to 3,000 meters using a form of echolocation. They produce 200 clicks per second, with which they find their prey in the dark depths. The highly intelligent orcas make sounds to communicate. Their sounds can vary a lot. Each family has its own dialect. The song of the humpback whale is world famous. It is considered the most complex form of non-human communication. A single song can last 25 minutes, a symphony all day long.
When this whale song was discovered, it really was the deciding factor that got people really interested in whales and saving them. Until that point, mostly the whaling industry was interested in whales.
Conservationists declare whales to be special animals. Those who trade in them declare them an important food source. A conflict that is hard to resolve, as Sir Geoffrey Palmer from the New Zealand delegation explains.
Only 3 nations now catch whales for what can be described as commercial purposes. A handful of others have quotas issued by the IWC for Aboriginal subsistence whaling. I believe the fundamental purpose of the convention has been in dispute. Is this a treaty about the conservation of whales and preventing them being killed? Or is it a treaty about whaling and the commercial exploitation of whales? And can it accommodate both views?
You have these anti-whaling countries like Australia, New Zealand, UK, United States, Germany, EU, the whole EU bloc. They are against whaling 100%. So they want only 0, but we will never accept a 0 quota.
Iceland, situated in the middle of the North Atlantic, is dependent on the sea like no other country. The catch from the high seas secured livelihoods and wealth. This is still the case today. Christian Loftsson runs a family business. His father founded the Valur Company after World War II. Between 1948 and 1985, 12,000 whales died on these ships. Then the abrupt end. Iceland joined the International Whaling Commission. The fleet was grounded, commercial whaling forbidden, a decision which was met with incomprehension by the whalers.
To harvest fish and to harvest whale is no difference. There was no reason to stop whaling here in Iceland, not at all. But all of this politics and this etc. So the politicians here were too weak to challenge it. So we have been hanging around for 20 years to get going again.
In a surprise move in 2009, the Icelandic Fisheries Ministry declared the hunting of the threatened fin whale open again. Fin whales are up to 24 meters long and weigh around 50 tons. The fin whale is, after the blue whale, the largest animal on Earth. Now, Loftson's fleet is beating the North Atlantic again, with the aim of hunting 150 fin whales a year.
By taking 150 fin whales out of a stock of 20,000, which is the estimate of the population around here, you can carry on forever.
In 2009 alone, Loftson's men shot 125 whales, one a day on average.
If you're in a commercial whaling, you have to make profit out of it, otherwise you go bankrupt. So you can trade with a country that also has lots of objection. So for us it is Norway and Japan.
In 2010, Lofson sold over 600 tons of fin whale meat to Japan, an extremely lucrative business. In Japan, around 4,000 tons of whale meat crosses the counters each year. This is mainly from minke whales, which are killed as part of scientific whaling, a delicacy fetching high prices on the markets. Although 2/3 of all Japanese people oppose whaling, the government is sticking to its strategy without compromise.
Our ultimate purpose is the sustainable use of whale resources based on scientific evidence. Therefore, we cannot accept strong public opposition to eliminate any whaling activity.
So we will never accept this. You make it clear.
Each year, the Japanese whaling fleet goes to sea from Shimonoseki Harbour, in the lead the 8,000-ton Nishin Maru, a floating slaughterhouse. Far from home, the fleet hunts any whale that appears before its harpoons, in the name of science.
They're killing whales as we speak here. Japan is operating in the North Pacific. Sperm whales, they're on the water, and shortly they'll head to the Southern Ocean.
The Antarctic, in the main untouched by humans. Unique habitat for countless species. Since 1994, the Antarctic has been a recognized whale protection area, where populations much reduced by hunting last century are to recover. Despite all laws, the Japanese government runs a dubious scientific program here, which around 1,000 minke whales fall prey to.
There is no way that we can call this as a science. The Japanese whaling program is not a science at all. They are simply keep using all the fleets and the crew members from the commercial whaling era, and they are just putting a sign of science.
In 2005, the Japanese Fisheries Ministry announced the largest hunting program since the start of whale conservation.
To put very large ships down to the Southern Ocean when all the Southern Ocean nations do not want whaling, including past whaling nations, when we know what we've lost down there and we know the massive illegal harvest that went on down there, and we know the devastation that was wrought on the Southern Ocean ecosystem. No, there's only one figure for all species down there, and that's 0.
Even though Japan appears uncompromising and set to go, one Asian country is standing up to them. A rock star with a mission.
No oil and gas to the Kimberley Close, Mr. Garrett. Save the whale nursery, not just the whales, save their nursery, Mr. Garrett.
Peter Garrett, singer of the rock band Midnight Oil and Australia's Environment Minister, doesn't want to tolerate whaling in the Southern Oceans any longer and has taken his case to the International Court in The Hague.
Whaling in IWC sanctuaries, the continuation of whaling for the foreseeable future in the Southern Ocean, the removal of the moratorium on commercial whaling is never going to be acceptable to Australia.
Apart from a few conservation organisations, only in Australia do actions follow words. For a few years, an armed ship belonging to the Fisheries Ministry has been watching the Japanese whalers.
What's extremely strange about Japan's activities is that whaling isn't even operating at an economic benefit. Japan's whaling industry has been operating at a loss for many, many years. It's completely dependent on subsidies, up to $12 million, around $12 million last year spent in subsidies that had to prop up the industry. So there's no economic benefit.
Despite, or maybe because of existing laws, the Australians cannot do more than watch.
They are doing the scientific whaling to prove the stock size and etc. in these areas in the Antarctic and in the Pacific. And they plan to go commercial whaling when they have got this data.
The consideration is based on one thing only. Will it make money? Will it not make money? If it is not making money now, will it make enough money in the future to overcome the losses that it's making now? If you want money so badly that you are willing to go up to the most beautiful, most magnificent, most graceful, most extraordinary, most awesome creature and kill it and sell and then chop it up into pieces and sell it, if that's how bad you want money, you can justify to yourself that, oh, you're helping people, you're creating jobs. No, it's not a good idea. It destroys this resource, if you want to call it a resource, for everybody forever.
On Reykjavik's quayside, directly opposite Loftson's whaling ships, more money is earned with live whales than dead ones. Over 75,000 people visit the island every year to see the shy marine mammals. The whale watching industry is generating €5 million for a bankrupt state that wants to become a member of the European Union. In distant Hawaii, much more is generated every winter. Hundreds of thousands of tourists visit the island group in order to watch humpback whales carry out their courtship display. A seemingly perfect combination of conservation and business. The Gulf of California in the north of Mexico has become a place of pilgrimage for whale watchers throughout the world. Thousands of grey whales gather here to mate in these protected waters. A booming business with growth figures of over 11% a year.
The whales are a great symbol for this beautiful part of nature that we should preserve rather than destroy. They've solved their problems of diverse living methods, in wonderfully extravagant ways that are really amazing. It's a bunch of crazy solutions and odd creatures that are out there.
Despite a multitude of skills, the droll grey whales have not managed to survive in many oceans. Once widespread, they are now extinct in the Atlantic.
The main reason we shouldn't kill them is there's not that many of them and we don't need to kill them. I mean, would it be possible, is killing some whales justifiable? I think it's possible that it is. If you carefully justify there's enough. I think the problem with the whaling industry is They're unnecessarily arrogant. They always say we're going to kill whatever whales we want. There's lots of them. Stop telling us what to do. Places like Norway, where I've spent the most time discussing it, they think that the rest of the world has unsustainably hunted whales and they've been sustainable, which just isn't true.
The Norwegian policy is that we can use all natural resources in a sustainable way, where we harvest from the surplus of these resources. And we make no distinction between whales or any other animals.
Norway looks back on several centuries of whaling and has not recognized the international ban on hunting to this day. Whale meat is often used as a cheap alternative to beef.
Whale meat is in a traditional part of the Norwegian diet. It's regarded as a very healthy meat because it has the omega-3 lipids, but not very much fat. So it's bought by regular people.
Depending on origin, whale tastes like beef heart, rump steak or liver with a slightly fishy aroma. Whale ham is a particular Norwegian delicacy. As Japan carried out its hunting activities under the smokescreen of science, Norway is the leader in commercial hunting. Since 1993, ships hunt for minke whales in the high Arctic. Norway is able to do this as it vetoed the moratorium. Even though the demand for whale meat has been decreasing in the last few years, Norway has increased its self-chosen target from 800 animals in 2005 to over 1,000 in future. The animals are only supposed to be killed in a humane way.
We have probably the strictest program in the world to control how whales are shot and killed. And we follow this, monitor this very closely. And I guess for all big game hunting in the world, Norwegian whaling will come out as #1 when it comes to how quickly you kill the animals.
But their own tests speak a different language. 1 in 5 whales do not die immediately. For some individuals, it can take an hour to die. If the harpoon was unsuccessful, a gun with armor-piercing munitions is often used to deliver the coup de grace. Whaling is only of economic importance in a few regions of Norway. The ideological component is more important. Hunting whales is supported by the population, or is at least not questioned, as long as it is a matter of the relatively common minke whales.
The whaling is not a big issue in Norway. It's a big issue for some families along the coast that run the whaling vessels, but for the population as such, and in particular in the cities, I don't think it's a big issue.
For many years, there's been international resistance. Under the guidance of the flagship Rainbow Warrior, Greenpeace started a campaign in the North Sea in 1999. The aim, the, in their eyes, illegal whale hunting of the Norwegians, was to be made public. The Norwegian government reacted swiftly. Warships accompanied the whaling fleet. The enemy ship was seized. Norway does not only shoot whales, it also shoots nature conservationists.
if they really wanted to have the world like a whaling industry, they have to take on the arguments very carefully, which they never do. They always get kind of, angry and say people don't know anything, like you can buy T-shirts in Norway, save the whales for dinner, or intelligent people need intelligent food, things like this,
In order to boost the declining market in whale meat, the Norwegian government is encouraging the whalers to develop a new marketing concept for whale products. It fears the whaling industry could slowly but surely dwindle if sales don't increase. Despite the bitter taste, the campaign appears to be successful. In February 2009, Norway exported 6.5 tons of whale meat to Japan.
I think there are conflicting interests. The take of some hundred animals per year is less than 1% of the population. From a conservation point of view, I don't think it's a problem. From a political point of view, I will not know what the future can bring.
Despite all efforts, all of the whaling nations want to have as large a slice of the cake as possible, using any means possible.
The language form will be, some scientists say blah, blah, blah. Other scientists say blah, 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 which is the opposite of the first blah, blah, blah. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that the scientists who are opposed to the other one are a tiny little group, all of whom are subsidized by the whaling nations.
We now have a IWC policy that is in line with our whole national perspective of sustainable use and sustainable development. Coincidentally, it's the same policy like the poor whalers here, like Japan, Norway, and Iceland.
It is an open secret that nations such as Japan buy the votes of other countries to further their own interests. Corruption appears to be a legitimate means to an end, as long as there is a compromise at the end, which takes account of the interests of the whalers.
In many ways, it's a demeaning experience to take part in these meetings because you hear such abundant, fluent lying by so many people.
What we should do is to compromise. Yeah, everyone. If Australia don't want to use whales, that's very good. I commend them for that. But they should never, ever try to impose that right on other countries that want to use it also. That is wrong.
Well, I look forward to coming and going whale watching.
Yes, and I'll welcome you. I'll take you out. Yeah. Yes, and I'll give you some nice whales too.
My side is table. So what are we going to do for 2 days?
We're going to watch them. We're going to watch them. We're going to go sport fishing. And we're going to eat a few pieces of whales and be happy about it.
We have lost total control on whaling. There is no international influence on whaling anymore at all. It's completely in the hands of the whalers. They do what they like.
The really important decisions are taken in private, behind closed doors. Even delegates from Japan sometimes get lost. On the agenda, an application by Greenland. They want to expand their traditional whale hunting, which they have been carrying out for centuries, and now want to be able to hunt the rare and strictly protected humpback whales.
Might not be a popular view, but if there is local whaling that is able to be sustainable, is based in local community, is not about offshore large ships, and then I probably would see that my views are different to theirs, but would respect their right to use resources in their waters.
We love whales. We would never kill whales just for killing's sake. We would never take more than we need. We have been doing this for the 4,500 years we have lived here. It is deep in our culture. The whales and the Inuit are deeply linked.
The cold waters around Greenland are one of the most productive in the world. Vast amounts of krill colour the sea in the summer months. This attracts humpback whales from the Caribbean, who fill their stomachs with the small crustaceans in the Arctic waters. Despite the general ban, some peoples are allowed to hunt protected whale species. However, they can only do this if they can show that the killing is part of their tradition and is necessary to cover basic requirements. Hunting humpback whales did not seem to be necessary for the Greenlanders for many years. Their food supply seemed to be secured with 4,000 small whales and a small number of bowhead, minke and fin whales.
Eating whale is as important to us as sausage for the Germans, beer for the Germans, red wine for the French, or rice for the Chinese or Japanese. It is part of our lives, our culture, understanding, and tradition. The whale is not only traditional, we also need the meat to be able to survive in this Arctic region.
Greenland, the world's largest island, has 44,000 kilometers of coastline, mostly covered in thick ice. An isolated country without animal husbandry or land cultivation. A nation without fruit and vegetable plantations. The Inuit don't just live with the sea, they live off the sea. Hunting is part of everyday life for these people, as it has been for thousands of years. Shaman Angankak lives and hunts in a traditional manner. In the old days, nearly all Inuit had a strong link with nature and her creatures.
For my people, the whales are really, really important because they are the biggest animal on the big water. They swim from the top of the world down to the bottom of the world and back. We go back and forth. So they come and tell us what we have seen. Matingo Inui. Oh.
In bygone days, the hunters called the whales with their songs.
Ay, ay, oh. We talk to them and greet them, and then we ask permission. If one of them is ready to be taken, everyone else will take off, except for one. They decide amongst themselves. But if I only kill them, there will be no more. But if I hunt them for food, they will always give me more.
Whale hunting is a symbol of a world that seems to be turning too fast for the Greenlanders. On ships' prows are found the same highly explosive munitions as on Icelandic, Norwegian and Japanese ships. The times of respectful treatment between man and whale appear forgotten. What remains are 57,000 inhabitants in 18 towns. An entire nation catapulted from igloo to internet in half a century. Souls torn apart in conflict between tradition and modernity. Endemic hunters are carving an orca. Not long ago, orca was a delicacy. Today, The meat is so contaminated with heavy metals that it is dangerous to consume.
It's the fat. The fat you cannot eat anymore because it's so toxic now. And those women who have eaten the orca fat too much, they can no longer breastfeed. The baby cannot eat from the breast. It's illegal because it's unhealthy for the child.
Nobody can take the Greenlanders' decision about how to deal with their future's conflicts and problems. On their way to independence, the whales themselves have become a political football of different interests.
One of the arguments why Greenland wants to become independent is because we want to be able to negotiate our own hunting quotas and not under a different flag. If Greenland hunts 10 or 15 humpback whales a year, this does not have an impact on the population in Greenland's waters. So that means our quota is too low, and we would like to have more.
In the face of current attempts, it is unclear how long they can keep the old traditions, the respectful handling of whales. At least music appears to connect the Inuit with the modern whale fans of Hawaii.
I really think a lot of these complex animal sounds are much more like music than they are like language. Why do I say that? Because they're not generally believed, at least, to stand for complex, symbolic ideas like language. We can't talk to them, we can't really speak with them as if what they're saying is language, but if you think of it as music, then you can immediately interact the way you might interact with a musician from some other culture, from Japan or India. They might not share your language, but you can play and something musical can happen.
Every winter, David Rothenberg travels to Hawaii to make music with the whales, make contact with one of the most intelligent creatures on Earth.
We think they're probably pretty intelligent, but what does intelligence really mean when it comes to animals? They're obviously not interested in the stuff we are, like transforming the world, using up resources, writing books, or all this kind of creating, transforming our environment. They're obviously not interested in that. So the kind of intelligence they have is something otherwise. What I'm more interested in is the fact that they sing something that's so beautiful and emotional to our ears. Is that just coincidence? Or is there something deeply important about how evolution works that shows how this whale that's gone this whole different path of evolution ends up making a song that humans find so beautiful? Is that just coincidence?
Years ago, the songs of whales had a power on people's imaginations that nothing else did. And so it was a wonderful way to get people focused and interested in whales. Most of the kids today, if you play them whale songs, they say, wow, I never heard that, I don't know what it is. People don't respond just to numbers and statistics and truths and equations. Some people do, very few. Almost everyone does respond, however, to an emotional feeling, something that, oh my God, that's absolutely beautiful. And I think that needs to be done.
End of conference. The Greenlanders got their quota. To the joy of the whaling nation, 27 humpback whales will die in Greenland's waters in the next few years. They are getting ready for a new era of whale hunting. In future, it will become increasingly difficult to distinguish between tradition, culture, science, and economy.
I think this is the very important first step to recognize the importance of sustainable use of whale resources based on scientific evidence.
I believe that we have a commitment to ensure that the people of Greenland get the nutrition that they need. They've been able to harvest the food that is around them.
What next? If after this decision in 2010 I then say, well, do you want to hunt blue whales? Then the reaction would be laughter and you would say I am mad. But what really is next? What is in 3 years, in 5? The whole thing is a strategy. They want to carry out sustainable whale hunting no matter how.
The rhetoric of the Japanese is clear. The aim of the research program is to hunt as many big whales as possible. No doubt about it. Their wish list doesn't only include minke whales, but also fin, humpback and sperm whales. It is only a question of when and under what conditions these species will be hunted again. But there is also reason for cheer, at least for now.
It's now clear and confirmed that in fact the Commission won't be taking a step backwards and won't be opening up the prospects of commercial whaling in the future.
This is all politics. You have to realize the Whaling Commission is only politics, nothing to do with reality. Just politics.
Nothing's changed. Whales are going to be killed under loopholes of scientific whaling, and countries setting themselves kill limits based on what they want to do. So, no, it's not a good outcome for whales.
February 2011. Japan recalls its fleet from the Southern Ocean under intense pressure by whale conservationists. However, the hunt in the Northern Pacific continues. May 2011. Lofsam claims that the hunt for fin whales in Iceland has been postponed indefinitely. Signs of hope. But conservationists do not believe in an end to whale hunting.
The question is, will whaling ever end? I think that's another way of saying, will ignorance ever end? And I fear not.
And all this talk about the world opinion against whaling and all that. I have not seen any opinion poll taken around the world showing the opinion of the world. Opinion, it doesn't exist. This is just cooked up by these anti-whalers, you know.
Those nations that are doing whaling should probably stop. They don't need to do it. It's not of economic importance. It's turned, people sometimes argue as if it was, but I really don't think it is. The majority of people around the world think whales are much more interesting to study and learn from than to kill.